It was one of those quiet mornings that make you believe the world still has soft edges. The sun had only just started to stretch its light across the rooftops, and the air was cool enough to make every breath feel clean. I loved cycling at this hour before the streets filled with cars, before life started running again. For me, it wasn't just exercise. It was my time to think, to breathe, to feel at peace. I'm 27, and I've never been the kind of person who enjoys noise or crowds. I prefer calm routines, the small, predictable comforts that come with early morning's black coffee, the scent of dew on the grass, the faint hum of my cycle tires against the pavement. It's my way of clearing my head before the day begins. Rehan, my best friend since college, often teased me about being an old soul trapped in a young man's body. He lived just a few streets away, and more often than not, I'd end up at his place after a ride. Sometimes, I'd leave my cycle in his garage, especially if we were planning to hang out later. His house had become almost like an extension of my own familiar, welcoming, and full of memories. Rehan's father, Mr. Kamal, however, was the opposite of me in almost every way. He was firm, disciplined, and carried a presence that made everyone straighten up the moment he walked into a room. Even in casual clothes, he had that air of command. People in the neighborhood respected him deeply. He had worked hard all his life, and had built a reputation for being both fair and unyielding. I respected him too, maybe even admired him in a quiet way, but I'd be lying if I said I wasn't a little intimidated by him. I remember once, Rehan joked that his father probably had eyes on the back of his head. I laughed it off then, but a part of me believed it. Mr. Kamal had that look, the kind that could catch you mid-thought, as if he already knew what you were about to say. So whenever I went over, I was careful, polite, respectful. That morning, I had cycled farther than usual, following the long road that curved past the edge of town and back through the quiet lanes near Rehan's neighborhood. My shirt clung to me with a thin sheen of sweat, and my legs burned just the right amount, the satisfying ache that told me I'd earned my breakfast. The sky was pale blue now, the kind of color that makes you want to stop and just look up for a while. As I turned down Rehan Street, I slowed my pace. His house came into view, a white-walled, two-story home with trimmed hedges and a large gate that always creaked a little when opened. Normally I'd text before dropping by, but I figured it wouldn't matter this time. I'd only stay a minute, just to leave the cycle and grab a bottle of water before heading home. I had no idea that this simple, innocent stop, one I'd made dozens of times before, would turn into the most confusing morning of my life. At that moment, all I knew was that my muscles were sore, my throat was dry, and the familiar sight of Rehan's front gate felt like a small reward after a long ride. I got off my bike, stretched my arms, and walked toward the house, unaware that Rehan wasn't home and that his father was. The gate creaked softly as I pushed it open. It was already half ajar, swaying slightly in the morning breeze, so I assumed someone had forgotten to latch it. I wheeled my cycle through and noticed the garage door standing open too. That was unusual. Rehan's father was particular about closing things properly. Still, I thought nothing of it. Maybe the gardener had come early. I stepped inside the garage quietly, intending to lean my cycle against the wall like I always did. The place smelled faintly of engine oil and dust, and a strip of sunlight cut across the floor through the small window near the ceiling. I could hear birds outside, the world still gentle and half-dash awake. Just as I was adjusting the cycle's pedal, a voice sliced through the stillness. "What are you doing here?" The tone was sharp, full of alarm. I turned, startled, and saw Mr. Kamal standing by the side door that led into the house. He was wearing a light gray, shell-wore camise, his expression stiff, eyes narrowed. For a moment, I froze, unsure what to say. Sigh. "I just came to drop the cycle," I stammered, still holding the handlebars. "Drop the cycle," he repeated, stepping closer. His brows were furrowed, suspicion written all over his face. At this hour, without knocking, and through the garage, I opened my mouth to explain, but the words tangled up. I usually leave it here after a ride. Rihan told me I could, he interrupted, his tone low and controlled. Rihan isn't home, so you just walk into my house when he's not here. The question stung more than I expected. I straightened instinctively, trying to meet his gaze, though my heart was pounding. No, sir, it's nothing like that. I didn't mean any harm. I saw the gate open, and I thought you could just come in, he said, taking another step closer. Do you always enter other people's homes without permission? His words carried that accusatory, defensive, and suddenly, I could feel my throat tightening. I tried to speak calmly, to explain that it wasn't unusual for me to come by early, that I'd done this many times before when Rihan was home. But the more I spoke, the more my explanations sounded like excuses. The air in the garage grew heavier. I could see that he didn't believe me. His eyes flicked to my hands, to the cycle, to the open door, as if trying to find proof of whatever wrongdoing he'd imagined. I promise I wasn't doing anything wrong, I said quietly, forcing a small, nervous smile. I just finished my morning ride and thought I'd drop this off before heading home. Morning ride, he repeated, almost to himself. That's what you call this? His voice carried disbelief, and I could feel my face heat up. Yes, sir. I do it every day, I said. You can ask Rihan. Rihan isn't here to speak for you. He cut in sharply. The silence that followed was unbearable. I could hear the faint ticking of a clock from somewhere inside the house, the rustle of leaves outside. I wanted to disappear. My stomach twisted with embarrassment. It wasn't just being accused. It was being accused by a man I respected. Someone whose good opinion actually mattered to me. I'm sorry if I've disturbed you, I said, my voice smaller now. I didn't mean to intrude. I'll leave right now. I began to move toward the gate, but his words stopped me again. Wait, what were you doing bending near the window just now? I blinked. The window. Yes, he said, his tone heavy with suspicion. I saw you through it before I came down. Looked like you were trying to hide something. I turned toward the window automatically. There was a small cloth on the floor where I had wiped my hands earlier after fixing the cycle chain. I suddenly realized what he must have seen me bending, reaching down, my posture looking awkward through the glass. Oh, I said quickly, I dropped this cloth. My hands were greasy. That's all, but my explanation only seemed to make him more doubtful. You expect me to believe that? I'm telling you the truth, sir, I said, frustration creeping into my voice. You can check, there's nothing here. He stared at me for a long second, and in that silence, every ounce of confidence I had melted away. I felt like a child being scolded, even though I had done nothing wrong. I didn't mean to frighten you, he said finally, his tone softening just slightly, but still guarded. But this isn't proper behavior. If you had any respect for this house, you would have called first. I do respect this house, I replied quietly, and you. That's why this hurts more than you think. The words slipped out before I could stop them. Mr. Kamal's eyes flickered with surprise, but he said nothing. I lowered my gaze, ashamed of how shaken I sounded. I walked toward the gate again, my footsteps echoing in the quiet space. My chest felt tight, my mind spinning with disbelief. How had a simple morning ride turned into this? Behind me, I could sense his presence still, his eyes following me, his silence louder than words. The moment I stepped out of the gate, the air outside felt different, heavier somehow, as though I had just walked out of a storm that hadn't quite passed. I didn't look back. I couldn't. All I could think was how quickly trust could crumble, how even an honest act could look suspicious through the wrong pair of eyes. Mr. Kamal didn't let me leave. His voice, calm at first, carried that same hard edge I'd only ever heard in moments when he was truly angry. Hold on, he said firmly, stepping out from the garage doorway. Before you go anywhere, I want you to explain against clearly what exactly you were doing in here. I turned, already tired and confused. I told you, sir. I was just fixing my pedal and cleaning the chain. It slipped near the wall, and I bent down too. He raised a hand, cutting me off. That's not what it looked like from where I was standing. His words landed like a stone in my chest. My stomach tightened. What do you mean? He didn't answer immediately, just crossed his arms and looked at me as though weighing his words. When I saw you through the window, he said slowly, it looked like you were doing something else. Something you shouldn't be doing in my house. For a second, I didn't understand. Then the implication hit me and my face flushed hot with disbelief. Sir, I said, forcing my voice to stay steady, I wasn't doing anything wrong, I swear. You must have seen wrong. He shook his head. I know what I saw. You were bending down, moving strangely, and when I came in, you froze like someone caught in the act. My jaw tightened. The mixture of embarrassment and helpless anger twisted inside me until my throat hurt. I froze because you startled me, I said. I wasn't expecting anyone. I just came to drop the cycle. That's all. But every sentence seemed to drag me deeper into suspicion. The more I spoke, the more I sounded like someone trying too hard to defend themselves. And he just stood there, watching me with that cold, assessing stare that made me feel smaller with every passing moment. Please, I said quietly, you've known me for years. You know I would never do something inappropriate. I thought I did, he replied. That one sentence broke something in me. It was the kind of thing that cuts deeper than shouting. I'd respected him since I was a teenager, looked up to him, even to hear him say that he doubted the kind of person I was. It felt like being pushed outside of something I'd always belonged to. I tried again, desperate to untangle the misunderstanding. Maybe it looked odd, but I swear, sir, it was nothing. The chain had jammed near the pedal, so I was just enough, he snapped. Do you take me for a fool? I've lived long enough to know when someone is hiding something. That did it. The frustration that had been simmering in me finally started to boil. I'm not hiding anything, I said louder than I meant to. You're misunderstanding everything, and you won't even give me a chance to explain. For a heartbeat. We both stood there, in silence, the air thick, our pride clashing like two stones. Then, a voice broke the tension. Baba, what's going on? I turned to see Rehan standing at the gate, holding his helmet in one hand, his expression a mix of confusion and worry. His timing was like a cruel twist of fate. Mr. Kamal didn't look at him. His gaze stayed fixed on me as he said, Your friend here thought it was appropriate to enter my house when you weren't home. Rehan frowned. What? That can't be true. He comes here all the time. He does, Mr. Kamal said tightly. But this time I saw him acting suspiciously in the garage, and when I asked, he had no clear answer. Rehan's eyes darted to me, searching for explanation. Rayan, what's he talking about? I was just dropping off my cycle, I said quickly, feeling the heat rise in my chest again. The chain slipped, and I was fixing it. That's all. Then why were you inside alone? Mr. Kamal pressed. Because your gate was open, I shot back before I could stop myself. The words came out sharper than intended. I thought someone was home. I didn't mean to trespass. Watch your tone, he warned, his voice low and dangerous. Rian stepped forward, trying to calm things down. Baba, please. You know Rayan, he'd never do anything disrespectful. You must have misunderstood. But Mr. Kamal's pride was too wounded to let go that easily. I know what I saw, he said again. If he were truly innocent, he wouldn't be this defensive. That line twisted inside me like a knife. Defensive. Of course I was defensive. How else was I supposed to react when someone I respected accused me of something so baseless, so absurd? I looked at Rehan, my voice breaking slightly. Do you think I'd ever cross a line in your house? Rehan shook his head immediately. No, never. I trust you. Then he turned to his father. Please, Baba, maybe you just saw from a wrong angle. But the damage was already done. The doubt had been spoken aloud, and once that happens, it hangs in the air like smoke. Refusing to fade, Mr. Kamal finally exhaled, long and heavy. If what you're saying is true, then fine. But next time, you wait outside until someone invites you in. Understood? His voice had softened slightly, but his eyes still held that shadow of suspicion, and that hurt more than the anger. It was as if, no matter what I said, a part of him would always wonder. I understand, I said quietly, swallowing the lump in my throat. It won't happen again. I picked up my cycle and began to wheel it out. My hands trembled slightly, though I tried not to show it. Every turn of the wheel felt heavy, as if I were dragging my own name behind me. Rihan called out. Rihan, wait. But I didn't stop. If I did, I'd break right there in front of them. I just needed to leave, to breathe. Behind me, I heard Mr. Kamal sigh, his voice low and uncertain. You trust too easily, Rihan, he muttered. Not everyone deserves it. And that more than anything was what shattered me completely. I had come there that morning with nothing but good intentions. As I always did, I had entered that house like it was part of my second home. And now, in the space of a few minutes, it had turned into a place where I no longer belonged. As I pushed open the gate and stepped into the street, the air outside felt different, sharp, colder, almost punishing. My chest felt hollow. For years, I had seen Mr. Kamal as a man of fairness, someone whose approval mattered to me. But in that moment, I realized how fragile respect could be, how quickly it could collapse under the weight of one misunderstanding. And as I cycled away from the house, my thoughts blurred between anger and sadness. I wasn't angry that he had misunderstood. I was angry because I had respected him too much to ever expect he would. The road ahead of me blurred slightly as I pedaled, not from speed, but from the heaviness sitting behind my eyes. The morning air, once crisp and calming, now felt thick and bitter. I didn't even know where I was heading. I just needed to move, to let the spinning wheels drown out the noise in my head. It was strange how quickly something so small could cut so deep. Only an hour ago, everything had felt normal, simple, peaceful. I'd been cycling just to clear my thoughts, and now, here I was, unable to think of anything except the disbelief on Mr. Kamal's face. His voice, sharp and full of accusation, replayed in my mind like a broken record. That's not what it looked like from where I was standing. I'd never felt so humiliated. It wasn't just that he thought I was doing something wrong. It was that he thought I could. That after years of visiting their home, of being part of their family dinners, of helping Rihan with things around the house, he could still look at me like I was some stranger with bad intentions. I slowed down near the small park by the corner of the street, my breath unsteady. I parked my cycle beside a bench and sat down, elbows on my knees. The early sunlight filtered through the trees, and I stared at the ground, tracing the cracks in the pavement with my eyes. Maybe it shouldn't hurt this much, I told myself. People misunderstand each other all the time, but this wasn't just anyone. This was him, a man whose approval I had always valued, a man I'd grown up respecting like my own father. The longer I sat there, the more the silence around me began to feel like a weight pressing on my chest. I didn't want to go home. I didn't want to talk to Rehan. I didn't want to explain myself anymore. What was the point? Once doubt enters someone's mind, no explanation ever really clears it away. It just lingers quietly, like a stain no one talks about but everyone sees. So, I decided to keep my distance. For the first time in years, I avoided their house. I ignored Rihan's calls that day, and the next. I just needed space to protect what little pride I had left. But what I didn't know was that back at that house, Rihan was standing in the middle of the living room, facing his father with disbelief. "Baba," he said, trying to keep his voice steady. "You've got it wrong." Mr. Kamal looked up from the armchair where he sat, his hands clasped tightly together. I know what I saw, Rihan. No, Rihan said firmly. You think you saw something. You saw Rayan through a small window, in poor light, bending over his cycle. You didn't even wait to ask properly before you accused him. Mr. Kamal exhaled heavily, the sound more like a growl of frustration. You're being naive. The way he reacted so defensive, it didn't seem right. Of course he was defensive, Rihan said. You accused him of something inappropriate in your own garage. What did you expect him to do? Smile and agree with you? That made Mr. Kamal pause. He leaned back in his chair, his eyes flickering with uncertainty. Baba, Rihan continued, his tone softening, you've known him almost as long as you've known me. You've seen how he treats people, how he respects you, how he's always been careful about everything in this house. You think someone like that would ever cross a line? Mr. Kamal said nothing. His gaze drifted toward the window, where the light was starting to pour in through the curtains. Rihan sighed, rubbing his forehead. He's been like family to us, and today you made him feel like a stranger. The words landed harder than Rihan expected. Mr. Kamal looked down at his hands, the weight of what had happened beginning to settle in. He hadn't realized, in his anger and suspicion, how deeply his words might have cut. He prided himself on his judgment, on being fair and clear-minded, but the more he thought about it, the more uneasy he felt. What if he had been wrong? He remembered Rayan's face, shocked, then hurt, then quietly defeated. That look wasn't guilt. It was pain. The kind of pain that comes from being misunderstood by someone you thought respected you. Rihan's voice softened even more. He won't say it, Baba, but you hurt him. You really did. You should have seen his face when he left. Mr. Kamal leaned back and let out a slow breath, his eyes distant. Maybe I overreacted, he admitted finally, though his tone was quiet, uncertain. But it didn't look right. Rihan, the way he was standing, the way he froze, because you startled him. Rihan interrupted gently. Anyone would have frozen like that. You scared him. The silence that followed was long and heavy. Mr. Kamal rubbed his temple, the sternness in his features softening into something more human regret. He wasn't a cruel man. He was a man who had lived long enough to believe that caution was strength, that suspicion kept his world safe. But maybe, this time, it had built a wall where none was needed. When Rihan left the room, Mr. Kamal stayed seated for a long while, lost in thought. The sounds of the morning filled the space, the ticking clock, the faint chatter of sparrows outside, but they barely reached him. He remembered Rayan helping him once with a heavy box of old books. How he'd laughed awkwardly when Mr. Kamal had insisted he rest and drink water. He remembered Rayan fixing the broken latch on the garden gate last year without being asked. Small things, quiet things, signs of a good heart. Now, those same memories made him uneasy. Maybe he had let pride make a fool of him. That night, I lay awake in my own room, staring at the ceiling, the fan spinning lazily above. My phone buzzed twice with Rihan's name, but I didn't pick up. I couldn't. I didn't want sympathy or explanations. I wanted peace. I wanted to believe that someday this whole mess would just fade away. But deep down, I knew it wouldn't. Not until the truth was spoken by the one person who had broken it. And maybe, just maybe, Mr. Kamal was starting to feel that too. It had been almost a week since that morning. I hadn't spoken to Rihan, and every time my phone buzzed, I let it ring out. The ache of being misunderstood by someone I'd respected like a father was still too raw. My cycle gathered dust in the corner, its once bright metal dull now, a silent reminder of everything that had gone wrong. One evening, just as the orange light of sunset seeped through my window, I heard a knock on the gate. My heart jumped. For a moment I thought it might be Rihan, but when I stepped outside, it was someone else. Mr. Kamal. He stood there, dressed in a simple kurta, his shoulders a little hunched, his expression uncertain. For a second, I thought my eyes were playing tricks on me. I had never imagined he would come to my house. Assalamu alaikum, beta. He sighed softly. I swallowed hard. Walaikum salam, uncle. Please, come in. The words left my mouth automatically, though my chest felt tight. He stepped inside, his eyes scanning the small garden, the open veranda where I often sat. There was an awkward silence between Ustik, heavy, almost suffocating. I poured him a glass of water and gestured for him to sit down. I hope I'm not disturbing you, he began. No, not at all, I said, though my tone was cautious. It's just unexpected. He nodded, his fingers tracing the rim of the glass. I know, Beta. I came because I owe you something, an apology. I froze. He took a deep breath and looked straight at me, his eyes no longer stern but weary. That day, I was wrong. I jumped to conclusions without thinking. I thought you were sneaking into my house for some reason, some foolish fear that took hold of me. I didn't stop to listen. I just reacted. His voice trembled slightly. Afterward, Rihan told me everything. How you always leave your cycle there. How you were just being thoughtful. When I realized what I'd done, he paused, pressing his hand to his chest. I felt ashamed. For a long moment, I said nothing. I had imagined this scene many times, rehearsing what I would say if he ever came. Anger had been my companion those nights I'd whispered bitter things into the dark, about pride, about judgment. But now, seeing him hear this man, who once seemed unshakable, his vulnerability softened something in me. Uncle, I said finally, I never meant any harm. You've always been like a second father to me. That morning, I just wanted to put the cycle away and leave quietly. I didn't even know you were home. He nodded, his eyes moist. I know that now, and it hurts me to think I made you feel small. You didn't deserve that. I sighed and leaned back, feeling the weight of the days lift slowly. I won't lie, it hurt a lot. I kept thinking, what did I do wrong? Why was I seen like that? It broke something inside me. He bowed his head. I understand. I've spent these days thinking about it. Sometimes, when people get older, they start to live inside their fears. Loneliness. It does strange things. I reacted like a fool. For the first time in days, I saw a faint smile tug at my lips. Rihan must have been upset with you. Mr. Kamal chuckled, the sound low, but genuine. You have no idea. He didn't speak to me for 2 days. Said I'd disappointed him and you both. Just then, another voice came from the gate. So you finally decided to fix it, huh, Abba? Rehan. He walked in with a grin, carrying a thermos in one hand and 3 cups in the other. I brought chai, he announced, setting everything down like he owned the place. I couldn't help but laugh. The air around us instantly felt lighter. Rihan poured the tea and handed it around, as if this were any other evening and nothing had ever happened. As the steam curled between us, Mr. Kamal spoke again, quieter this time. You handled yourself with more grace than I did, Bate. You didn't shout. You didn't disrespect me even when I did. That says a lot about your upbringing. His words warmed me in a way I hadn't expected. Rihan nudged me playfully. Told you he'd come around. Abba can't stay angry forever, especially when he knows he's wrong. Mr. Kamal gave him a stern but affectionate look. Watch it, young man. I'm still your father. We all laughed, and the sound felt like the final piece falling back into place. For a while, we just sat there talking about nothing and everything. The setting sun faded into night, and the garden lights flickered on, casting a soft glow across the veranda. I realized how much I had missed this warmth, this simple connection. Before leaving, Mr. Kamal placed his hand on my shoulder. Thank you for forgiving me, he said quietly. I shook my head. There's nothing to forgive, Uncle. We just misunderstood each other. He smiled. Then, let's not let misunderstandings come between us again. As they left, Rihan turned back and grinned. So, cycling again tomorrow, I chuckled. Yeah, early morning. The air's clearer then. He gave a thumbs up. "I'll join you." When the gate closed behind them, I stood there for a moment, listening to the distant hum of the city. The silence felt peaceful, again no longer heavy, but calm. I walked over to my cycle, brushed off the dust, and adjusted the handlebars. The next morning, when the sun rose over the quiet streets, I was back on the road, riding freely, the wind cool against my face. The misunderstanding was behind us, replaced by something stronger: forgiveness, trust, and the quiet understanding that sometimes even broken bonds can be mended if we choose patience over pride. And as I passed by Rihan's house, I saw Mr. Kamal standing by the gate, waving with a smile. I waved back, feeling light again, like the world had righted itself. Life has a way of circling back, just like my morning rides. One moment, you're lost in confusion and hurt. The next, you're gliding again, feeling the wind remind you that peace is always possible if you let it return. A few days after everything settled, I found myself back on my cycle at dawn. The streets were still quiet, bathed in that tender, silvery light that makes everything look softer. The same road that once carried my heavy thoughts now felt light beneath my tires. Every turn of the wheels seemed to whisper, "It's over now, you're okay?" As I rode past Rihan's house, I saw Mr. Kamal standing by the gate again, as he often did now. When he noticed me, his face lit up in a calm, knowing smile. He lifted his hand in greeting, and I returned the gesture. Easily, no tension, no hesitation, just mutual respect. It was such a small thing, a wave, but it carried the weight of forgiveness, understanding, and quiet growth. It reminded me that sometimes peace isn't about forgetting what happened, but about choosing what to hold on to. That misunderstanding had shaken me more deeply than I cared to admit. For days, I kept wondering how something so innocent could spiral into such pain. But now, as I looked back, I realized that the experience had taught me something valuable about people, about how fragile trust can be, and how quickly assumptions can cloud judgment. I thought about Mr. Kamal's face the day he apologized, how heavy his regret looked, how human it was. We all make mistakes, I realized. Even the people we look up to, especially them. The strength of a bond isn't in its perfection, it's in how we mend it when it breaks. I also learned something about silence. In those few days of distance, I discovered how powerful quiet reflection can be. Sometimes we rush to speak, to explain, to defend, but silence gives space for truth to breathe. It's what allowed both of us to see things clearly again. And forgiveness. Forgiveness is its own kind of strength. It doesn't erase what happened, but it releases the burden of carrying it. That day when I shook Mr. Kamal's hand, I felt something inside me unclench. I wasn't doing it out of politeness. I was doing it because I genuinely wanted peace, and that peace stayed. Since then, my rides have felt different. Not just a morning habit, but a reminder, a quiet ritual that keeps me grounded. Sometimes Rihan joins me, racing ahead and laughing like we used to when we were kids. Sometimes Mr. Kamal waves from afar, holding his cup of tea as the sun rises behind him. Every time I pass that house, I feel a kind of gratitude that words can't quite touch, because now I know that misunderstandings are part of life. What defines us isn't whether they happen, but how we choose to respond when they do. You can let them break you, or you can let them teach you, and in my case, it taught me patience. It taught me to listen more carefully to others, and to myself. It taught me that even when someone sees you wrongly, it doesn't change who you are inside. The truth, eventually, finds its way to light. As I reached the end of the lane that morning, the sun finally broke through the horizon, painting the road gold. I slowed down, breathed in the fresh air, and smiled. Sometimes, the hardest roads teach us the gentlest lessons. And as I pedaled forward light, free, and forgiven, I carried that truth with me, knowing that some misunderstandings don't end in bitterness. Sometimes, They end in a better understanding of what it means to be human.